And into May we go. BTO, Bachmann Turner Overdrive, or Bubba Team Oglers. You decide. Copy and paste. Right, we went into May and we formed the THI state and country groups to be formed into 50 state groups in America, EU and other countries to create their own groups and combine with other groups as they see fit. The Pentagon was being threatened by the Chinese elders and also the Treasury Secretary Stephen Munchkin. And we warned this could get real interesting now, and it did in varying ways that didn't become too public. Tuesday became stark reality that Munchkin and his crew are blocking funds from the Manor World Holding Trust being cleared directly into the Pentagon. Basically, they told the Pentagon to go and F themselves, and so if anyone in this country is under any illusion still, this puts everything this show and Kim has stated several times now. This country has been hijacked and is being ran by people intent on the financial destruction of America and its people. It is being ran by dragon groups, SSP, fake Chinese elders, Rothschilds, elements, and fake mercenary or private security groups, all under the order of the Black Sun. All banks in America were caught out this first week in May, given backdoor access to their banks back to the Fed and the Treasury. Actions were taken and all banks had their logins cancelled, so they had no access to their own systems. So the transfers on hand to the Pentagon could be pushed through. Now the Pentagon confirmed receipts of the funds, and then the fun and games started. The FDIC insurance account, which is part of the trust, is over all the US banking system, was transferred to the Pentagon's management for now. In essence, a replacement treasury for now. Issues now surfacing in Ecuador and Julian Assange is largely to do with Mike Pence doing backdoor deals, not at the request of the president. Mr. Pence will be exposed for many things soon. The Pentagon's money sent by Kim was stolen and went straight out of the back door and landed to a back server of GCHQ in the UK, with accepted involvement of the entity known as Hillary and the Blue Dragon groups, with input from the Templars. The GCHQ is the head office of the NSA. Anyway, Kim located it and returned it all back to the trust. All I will say is GCHQ paid the price for that skullduggery. The Kenya Catholic Doctors Association is charging UNICEF and the World Horror Organization with sterilising millions of girls and women under cover of an anti-tetanus vaccination programme sponsored by the Kenyan government. We also undertook recently a change in the banking system itself of rewriting the code to a language they won't understand and is only known to Kim and a select few others. Gone are their binary codes and is replaced with a new language implemented and can only be decoded by the trustee when gaining access to the banking system. Certain access will be granted over time to certain organisations that need to gain access, but that will be far more discretionary than previously. Then we did a piece in May, questions people don't ask. 1. Mr. Politician, what are your policies? 2. If Russians had colluded, how is the CIA meddling in every other country's election any different? 3. Doctor, during your training, how much of it was spent on learning cures? The answer is none. 4. Lawyer. Do you understand common or natural law? 5. Lawyer. Why are you working for the Brits under bar rules? 6. Teacher. Do you realise we've all been taught crap for 4 generations? 7. Do people ask the church for proof of what they're saying? A big one there. 8. Brokers. Were you second-hand car salesmen before this job? 9. Banks and governments. You do realise you both only have our money, not yours. 10. Do people ask banks why their savings interest is half to 1% when they charge us 15 to 26% to loan our money, not theirs, back? 11. If guns kills, who pulls the trigger? 12. Bank moneylenders, can you explain the difference between discharging or paying off your debt? 13. Blue or red pill? Does anyone ask why we have to take either? 14. Charities. Where did all the money for Africa go? And why are millions still starving there? 15. People in the military. Is it acceptable to kill someone because someone else asked you to? 16. To the IRS. Why are you forcing people under duress to pay for something that is voluntary? 17. Humanity in general. Is it acceptable to hate people from another country if you have never even met them? 18. If Jesus returns, will he not be a zombie? 19. How do we know that the people who wrote the Bible, Talmud, and other scriptures were not fake news? 20. Doctor, do you know what is in this vaccine? Can you verify it? Can you swear on your life it's safe to use? Will you sign a $1 billion indemnity should he or she answer yes to all? 21. If inflation is a secret tax and we have to pay more, why don't we get a refund for deflation? 22. Do people ask why in a general election do only 2 parties get recognised? 23. What would happen today if you told a cop or doctor you saw a bush go on fire by itself, then whilst it was on fire it spoke to you? 24. Who told us we had to pay to live on our own planet? 25. Has anybody asked, how can you be an immigrant on your own planet? 26. Do TSA workers at the airport go through the same checks as we do before starting work? If not, why? 27. If your country is democratic and you have royals, who voted for them? 28. If oil is fossil fuel, why are they drilling below fossil levels? 29. If nuclear power started in the last century, why is there a layer of nuclear fallout across the Middle East and Southeast Asia buried beneath the soil? 30. If Adam and Eve are the first 2 on the planet, does this not mean all of humanity is born out of incest? 31. If vegetarians are about saving animals, why are they eating all their food? 32. If elections are fair, why haven't we had a person interested in humanity? 33. If GMO is good for us, why does it have no vitamins or nutrients in it? 34. If fluoride is good for our teeth, why does it require a hazmat unit to clean it up? 35. If all trails and planes are contrails, who developed the planes that don't leave contrails and why? 36. If a woman is a second-class citizen, why is she responsible for bringing up the children? 37. Why can't a large number of current American teachers not answer all the questions a 13-year-old was tasked to answer back in the 1880s? 38. Has hip-hop ever done a song that doesn't include the lyrics shoot cops, bitch, mofugger, n-word, f-word or ho? 39. Why is everyone sick or dying, including the dog, in country and western music? 40. If black is deemed as dark, why is the White House called white? 41. If Columbus founded America, does that mean no one was here before? 42. Did Columbus bring millions of Native Americans ashore with him? 43. If America gained independence from Britain on July the 4th, why did Britain send America a new higher tax tariff 2 weeks later? 44. Why did all domestic cats only originate in Egypt? I can feel the bristling now. 45. If air travel is safe, why do they call the building terminal? 46. If Israel and Jerusalem is so important, then why do most Jews not live there? 47. On a search for pictures of Hillary, why is there different shapes and sizes of Hillary? 48. If Munchkin or Mnuchin is the chosen one, why isn't he the president? 49. If every country is in debt, who is the money owed to? 50. If the originals were called the Founding Fathers, who founded them? 51. If ETs have been in orbit around this planet since the alt media started, why haven't they landed or helped? 52. How can a country with a GDP of 18 billion, 9 zeros, sustain a global currency reset of 7 quadrillion, 15 zeros or more? 53. If the Earth is wobbling, how can the eclipses be consistent? We found out later. 54. If the Earth is flat, why hasn't anybody fell off yet? 55. Which executive order, statute, rule or regulation created by our incorporated companies acting as our government stated people shouldn't care for each other? One of the members posted something in May which highlights my mistrust of medical diagnostic peoples, in particular psychiatrists. Psychology is not learned from a book, fact, but visual observations of people and correlating it with wisdom. These people just make shit up as they go along, and here's a prime example. Drapetomania, a condition of mental illness for a black person or slave who exhibits an irrational desire for freedom and a tendency to try to escape. It's beyond comprehension, that type of thinking, and indicative that profession is not ran based on mental illness or medical assessment, but political programming rhetoric. I'll state again, most mental patients, as they are called, in my opinion, are suffering from a form of possession by a non-form entity from the spirit world. The majority of that spirit world is infected or taken over by the dark forces. Now, to understand anything to do with the body of another person requires empaths. And you don't get that from a book or passing their incompetence level tests either. Perhaps we came up with a new word for the cabal, given that drapetomania. Anything so ridiculous in all my life. So a new word for the cabal, deep states and rich elites: half-wittedry, an irrational condition of delusion and deep desire to hold on to power and control for a system that no longer exists. Oops. Kim received several complaints from various organisations of why they were kicked out of the system. Well, it's fairly simple. You, A, didn't need access to begin with, B, misused the access for nefarious or self-serving agendas, or C, most of you are duplicating same roles, when one department is sufficient, or D, all of the above. This was part of the clean-up and streamlining of the banking system and all its components, and as we have said before, what worked previously does not now. Kim and I both had separate addresses to the council early May to deal with a particular issue of who owns the assets on this planet. The Lord himself, Anu, not Jesus, no, Anu, the reptile king, thinks all the assets belongs to him and them. No. You and your demon offspring stole it all. And not just from here either, or just from humans either. And pressure is now being applied to remove some of the obstacles here to move forward quicker. Final piece tonight, the programme of working with the 39 other species is working very well. In fact, many of them cheered after Kim spoke one particular sentence this week: all of us have been raped, pillaged and harvested by the two main protagonists of death and destruction. No longer will that be tolerated above, below or on the surface, or further afield in this universe. Anu best quit his path or he'll face the same consequences as M, and that is not a threat. It is a promise. Learn to work, care and share together as equals, or it's time to die. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. Right, we'll get into part 2, which is the continuation of May of this year. And we're going to open with a piece that we did on land space and how we waste vast amounts of it and how the clowns destroy so much of it and then rebuild the same bits. As we get crammed into tighter and tighter living spaces, like there is no space left, when there is space everywhere. And anyone who's watched the Aerial America series will see that there is vast areas of this country uninhabited that can be developed to move people away from oceans and river systems that are causing much damage to homes, businesses and lives currently. Remember, we had all the floods in May and further into the year. The days of having to live near water are now 150 years out of date. If we can build vast pipelines at vast cost to pipe bacteria poop around the country, which in and of itself is outdated technology, then we can build water pipelines that will actually serve many different purposes. So let's look at some of the reasons why we can't develop certain land. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not espousing build on all land. Some must be kept pristine and preserve the ecology of the planet. But currently our building issues and the chaos it can cause is beyond stupid at this point. Building on barrier islands that runs all along most coastlines around America is not clever thinking. Look at Manhattan, an island that resembles a child's Lego building creation. It's utter madness. as the buildings get higher and higher, resembling a male competitive streak of my dick is bigger than yours. It's ridiculous. And yet there is a quarter to half of the other buildings in Manhattan that are not even fully occupied. And all it takes is one tsunami or one errant storm and it all gets wiped away. So who are the biggest American landowners? Well, here is a fact that will disturb and anger most of you, as well as surprise. 72% of all land in America is privately owned by the families. 72%. And the heirs to those lands are David Pingree, who owns 830,000 acres of land. By comparison, the state of Rhode Island is 900,000 acres. Then you've got Stan Kroenke, who owns 865,000 acres, which is 4.5 times the size of New York. Richard King's historic ranch. The land stretches over 6 Texas counties with over 900,000 acres of land. Henry Singleton acquired 1.1 million acres of land before his death in 1999, and in a span of 14 years he purchased 28 different ranches. The Irvings have amassed 1.2 million acres of land. The Reed family, 1.3 million acres. Although they have at least been given something back, as they recently planted their 100 millionth tree on their land. Brad Kelly has accumulated 1.7 million acres in less than a decade. The Emerson family own 1.9 million acres, and number 2 is Ted Turner, who owns around 2 million acres across 7 states, which is just shy of 3 Rhode Islands. John Malone is the largest landowner in the US with 2.2 million acres of land, and like Turner, is involved with the cable companies. As a comparison, the whole of London is 75,000 acres, with the City of London an extra 717 acres. And who are the world's biggest landowners? Number 1, the Queen of England. 2, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. 3, the Pope. 4, King Mohammed of Morocco. 5, King Bhumibol, I've spelt that right, of Thailand. Sultan Qaboos of Oman. King Gyanendra of Nepal. Kidman Holdings, yes, Nicole family. King Abdullah of Jordan is at 9, and AA Company of Brisbane is 10. And then we had another school shooting, and yet again the media twisted it into something else and used it for an agenda. Essentially, this is another sign of the alt media working. And this time it is the youth who are pushing our message and just don't believe what the politicians and the mainstream media are telling us. And they used it for an agenda. The very public scene of hundreds of Colorado students and their parents who walked out of a vigil that was turned into a political theatre by the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence was so embarrassing that the gun control group actually issued an apology. And before leaving the Wednesday night event, students shouted in front of journalists who the Brady campaign invited, "This is not for us, political stunt. We are people, not a statement." Now, the Brady campaign had portrayed the event as a vigil in memory of Kendrick Castillo, a student who died from gunshot wounds after he and two other students charged one of the attackers at Highlands Ranch in Colorado. So instead of putting together an event to bring people together to mourn the loss, no. The mainstream media stepped in, the politicians stepped in, and the gun control brought in activists and the Colorado politicians. No surprise, Democratic presidential contender Michael Bennet and also the Democratic US Representative Jason Crow to push a one-sided political agenda. That failed. Then the rumblings of impeachment started coming in. And this show decided to give Mr. Trump a bit of a heads up and asking him to fight back. You know, it's one thing doing mild tweets here and there, but there's an awful lot of evidence that is being built up. And so as the Democrats in the US Congress debated possibly impeaching Mr. Trump, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said this week in May that he is engaged in a cover-up. Oh my. Speaking to reporters after a meeting of the House Democrats on Capitol Hill, Pelosi said, "No one is above the law," oh dear, including the President of the United States, or the House Speaker, I might add. And we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up. So it went on to say that Democrats who control the House of Representatives and Trump are engaged in a high-stakes power struggle over their ability to investigate him, with the president stonewalling multiple investigations of him by congressional committees. These are the same, if you remember from last night, these are the same congressional committees who don't have access to the files because they don't have a need to know. So that's the backdrop to that. And it's all hypocrisy in its highest form. Typical agency-type tactic of accusing others of doing what they have been doing. That repeated quite often this year, did it not? Now, I could spend probably the rest of this show highlighting the cover-ups of the Democratic Party, but decided to list just a few. The Uranium One deal, Benghazi, Obama's birthplace, nationality and records, the Clinton death trail, the Clinton Foundation rogue donations, harvesting children in Haiti, Democratic groups harvesting children at the border, Biden and Munchkin fiddling with kids, Hoover abetting with Hillary skinning kids for adrenochrome. The Dems are KKK, Antifa and also Black Lives Matter. Obama sending cash to Iran. Mnuchin working for the Chinese Dragons and committing treason against the country. 2 years and vast amounts of public money wasted based on a fake and fabricated document sent by the Blue Dragons and MI5 at the request of Hillary about Russian collusion. How Hillary has done deals to sell all of America's in-ground resources off in September 2016 to foreign groups, including Russian. How Mnuchin and Hillary are blocking the Manor World Holding Trust funds going to the people. How the Pelosi family will generate vast fortunes off the Green Deal. Why Mike Pence is working with the Democrats to oust Trump. Why is a bartender with no political background promoted as a paid actor into a major political role? Yes, you, AOC, you're as fake as a glass eye. The Hillary server issue and how she has control of the FBI, CIA, NSA and also the DHS. Or why Hillary via Citadel and or the Vice Group, which runs NYPD, is blocking the NYPD investigation into ritual and sacrificial abuse to children committed by her and her lesbian partner, who is also a Muslim Brotherhood agent, Huma Abedin. Or how the Dems got the highest number of females and black people into their ranks, and yet not one of them is helping the people. You want investigations and no cover-ups, Pelosi? Try and investigate all of them. Then we'll have a real story, Mrs. Pelosi. Trump then can release his tax returns and it's all transparent. Then we can lock you all up and put the people in charge of this country that has interests of the people only. Pelosi, oh dear, a national embarrassment. Facelift Central, and we got word on the wire that she's appearing in a movie shortly called Eyes Pinned Open. Next piece. The Fed notified the banks about issuing a QE, quantitative easing, which is not possible anymore, against Treasury notes. And they collected them all from the banks, and then the Fed sent them all to China. No surprise there. Yet more of our money siphoned out by these banksters. And there was a reminder to the top brass asking the question, is that not a national security issue? We're going to say that quite a lot over this year, because it doesn't appear to be. A defunct bank with no license sending our money to China. The Federal Reserve, for those new, is defunct and it has no license to operate. So let's get this right. A Langley guy who in this week in May mentioned gets 20 years for selling secrets to China, and yet a bank on our soil that has nothing to do with America can send our money to those same nasty Chinese. And what happens? Now, on the back of that deal, Mr. Munchkin negotiated a 35% loan against those notes on the promise they would get a payout back off them from China. Guess what? They got nothing. And essentially, he made a donation to keep the deep state of China going. And we asked the question, hello, Mr. Trump, hello, the military, hello, the Pentagon, what and when are you going to act on these criminals in our midst? Also, back in May, a significant shift to the planet frequency-wise was undertaken. Some of you may have felt the effects. If it works as planned, it will change things permanently and will have a profound effect. That was in May. SSP Goons, Secret Space Program, were caught drilling again into level 7 underground into the realm of the other beings. This time in New Zealand to gain access to certain items and systems, because they're now locked out of not just the banking systems but other systems as well. Turns out for them that was a complete waste of time, as that failed as well. SSP, for those of you who are new, are anti-human organisation, and the military, like them, are now barred from going below level 6 in what was joint facilities between humans and ETs and also NTs. In May, the topic of we are in a simulation came up again, so we decided to dig into that a bit. And this is a bit like the Russian dolls. We are the one doll, but we created all the dolls inside with programs external and internal. In fact, all are internal because we allowed them to take hold on us. Clowns and their systems, programs and projects can do what they like, but we have forgotten we have our own sovereignty to uphold. Do we accept their programs? Did you evaluate it and come to a balanced choice to then make? No, we just rolled over and accepted it on many levels. We became complacent and accepting that others will look after us. Again, that's not being sovereign. Kim can declare the whole world sovereign overnight, but it won't change a damn thing. Why? Because the people haven't changed is the simple answer. Sovereignty with no understanding or comprehension of what it means is another lazy-assed saviour program. Society is always creating labels to define themselves when your very presence is defining, not some bloody title or label. And if people believe they're in a simulation, then in essence they are. Because as creators, we create. If you create it, it manifests as your reality. I don't believe it, and so it's not part of my reality, and subsequently I'm not in a simulation. We had a situation a long time in the past where all of humanity were put in pods, sleeping pods. Some still believe many are still in them. Now, I have seen the pods. I got in one and stepped out of it to experience what it's all about. I made the choice not to partake in that amnesic state. It's like the lie. If you repeat it often enough, it becomes the truth for many. So you manifested the illusion that the lie is the truth. But you can also manifest the truth from the lies, can you not? We have all had a family member or a friend that always focuses on themselves being sick. And what happens next? They're always sick. Are they just unlucky, or have they manifested their own sickness to play the victim game? Other people state, I have no luck, and so they get none. And these are just examples of how we all manifest our own reality, and yet don't sit down with ourselves and analyse what we're actually thinking or saying. And it is a big problem that humanity faces going forward. All that energy creating boxes, lies, illness and bad luck for ourselves can be switched into being ourselves, truth, health and luck with a simple change of our own thought processes and mindset. As for the simulation, it is your choice to believe you are in one. I choose not to be, which is why I travel far. If I was in a simulation, that wouldn't take place. Now, there is a situation which I've explained before of an illusion of minor holographic nature of things here. A copy of this is in the THI Facebook files. And how it was done with frequencies, you can do this yourself. Draw a normal wave line on a piece of paper starting from the bottom left and curving up. Then you draw a second wave line starting level with the top of your waves and curve it from the left down and draw a normal wave. And if you've drawn it right, it intersects in the middle of each up and down wave curve. The first wave is the organic wave. The second one is inorganic and an overlay. Now, what happens if you frequently overlay a picture? It becomes holographic in nature. Now, if you've drawn the wave correctly, you now turn your paper 90 degrees, and what you will see is a series of figure eights. That is the Mobius loop we've been trapped in for 6 periods of 13,000 years. The middle of the 8 figure is our escape. It has the east and west gate, which I explained in a show in February of 2018. You may remember it by this piece. Well, you're all going to die. That piece. That's nearly 2 years ago now. Jeez. Then we did another piece in, still in May, I think, of to find out where we're all at in terms of the self, our surroundings, and the collective. Have people done their shadow and inner work? Many will say yes, many will lie. Not only to others, but to themselves also. And I asked the question, do people really not step back and look at themselves and realise how lying to ourselves is beyond pointless, and it's also a bit stupid, and yet we do it all the time. That includes me. I'm no different to anybody else. The question along the journey of self-discovery is, what is the underlying issue to it? You find that, and you are on your way to correcting it. The key to it all is self-healing. What? Self-healing, Thomas? You mean to say we don't need healing machines, pills, psychologists, or some new age multi-titled made-up label person to fix me? No, you don't, and that is the key. It all starts with you. Do you want to heal and fix you, or are you content hiding behind the mask and living the illusion? Except those masks just don't work like they used to. That became even more obvious as the year went on. The masks were falling rapidly as the truth waves washed over the planet in a tidal wave that just keeps rolling. Will it stop? Not this time. We demanded the truth, and the truth is what we'll get in all, at times, its brutal glory. Now, THI members were given a heads up on this in May and June, and Cosmic Voice at the time, of 2015 with regards to shadow and inner work, and late 2016 through 17 with the masks of illusion beginning to fall. 2017 was also the cut-off point for those who didn't choose to awaken to the new world and the new reality. And many people beat themselves up over this, but it's not our fault that they are not ready. It was their choice to ignore and accept a brutal, cruel, criminal-led, fraud-laden and heinous crimes world, not ours. They chose to ignore it. As always, when something profound or way outside of the box of what is considered normal, many choose to ignore it and then rush when another date looms. Not this time. We all received many calls to step up or stand up and for the vast majority of people, they ignored it. And some will make excuses. Well, I didn't have a landline, or my mobile reception is not good in this area. Except it was not that type of call. This was the inner call. And it rang out loud and clear. Some rose to it, many didn't. A case of most have ears, but not all listen. Now, thankfully, a number did listen and began the work they were tasked to do, mostly quietly, many in the background, some up front, and some on the front line and active. Some have awoken, but there are many still unsure of their role or task. And yet certain people ask, why are they in that role and not them? Because you didn't hear the call. Or you did and wasn't sure of what to do. You never defined your own sovereignty or tasks ahead. But that's okay. So don't be too hard on yourself. The key thing is some did hear and act on the call. If not, I suspect none of us would be here now. The problem in life is bundled into a number of things that are all co-related. Apathy, limitation, victim-saviour program, non-sovereignty and no personal responsibility. Now we can reel off a range of excuses or reasonable reasons as to why those problems pervade throughout society, but ultimately the buck stops with you. There is no government executive order stating you have to be all or some of the above, unless that was sneaked into the Paris Climate Agreement as well. But there is no bill stating we should not care for each other either. And a majority of society caring or actually giving a shit will solve most of the world's problems overnight. The bigger picture problem on this planet is the lies told to all, but the lies stuck as people forgot to think critically or future think, and learned only to delve into the past and react to the now, but the past, present and future are all one and the same. 3 planes of existence with one wave undulating through all 3 layers. So technically you can be in all 3 at any given time. And I asked people not to ask me to explain that more, but to think on it themselves. That's where you get your real understanding. I had done a piece about the 3 awakenings, which was in last night's show, I think, but there's another 6 or 7 that follow that get you into full alignment of not only who and what you are, but also what you can become. Life is all about our emotional and mental states. One or the other being off will set the whole of you off and unable to gain the next level of development. Emotional states is all about reaction, and subsequently how we deal with those reactions. Anger, rage, envy, insecurity, oversensitivity, projection, upset, melancholy, anxiety, frustration are all emotional reactions we perceive are external of us. But the key is recognizing it is actually an internal aspect of us. Someone makes you angry and you rage back at them is often a common trait to undertake, and it feels better, some say, when they've done it. And whilst that may be the case in some minor cases where you've allowed yourself to hold it all in and harbour that frustration and then just let it all blab out, most of the time anger and rage is because you haven't mastered your own emotional state. This is where the 45-55 comes into view again. Being 45% calm and 55% angry is a manageable range, as it doesn't take much to recalibrate. All out ranting, face going red, frothing out of the side of the mouth increases your blood pressure, your heart rate, and sends the body spiraling out of control and sync. No one ever won an argument by ranting in people's face. It's a loss of control, and you will get picked off by someone in control of themselves. If you did win anything by ranting, you have only achieved that by brute force, threatening and bullying behaviour. That is not winning an argument. That is losing self-control and mastery, and also a loss of respect. In overview, you won nothing, but lost much. Now, one of the biggest issues within this framework is low self-worth, something I struggled with, which leads to insecurity again, indecision, non-trust of the self. It's a key aspect, and turns many aspects of their life into envy and comparison and competitive mindsets with all those around them, which is the most destructive aspect of how and why we struggle to interact with each other. So where does it all start? Well, sometimes it is a spillover of family traits of your ancestors that has bled through into this one. But often it is your relationship to your parents and siblings that generate most poor emotional states. For some in this lifetime, it has been or is your role to correct the ills of your own bloodline. Some will have recognised that, many will not, but correcting the bloodlines of their own family has been the role of many in this time period. To start anew, we have to cleanse and, more importantly, heal the past. Families have histories of generational sexual abuse or alcohol or drug abuse, aggressive behaviour patterns, violence, divorces which spill over into successive generations from one or both sides of the family. It may have been your role this lifetime to correct that. Comparative mindset starts young, comparing yourselves to your siblings and peers. Comparison in the pursuit of curiosity can be a healthy learning tool. But the pervasiveness of this throughout society, though, suggests it is far more damaging than most realise. There is barely a single object or interaction that we haven't fine-tuned our brains into making comparisons towards others with. And the most damaging aspect of it all is, most of it is done within your own circle, be it family, partners or friends. But if you're always comparing yourself to what others have done and feel bad about yourself that you haven't achieved this, that and the other, which then leads to envy, how are you ever going to recognise your own contribution to society and, more importantly, your own value and development? One person in my life has a plethora of certificates, awards, degrees and achievements, but is riddled with insecurity, lower self-worth, that the person always feels they've never done enough. because their siblings did this, that, or the other, when that person has achieved so much in life themselves, which should be a sense of pride. But because of the low self-worth and self-imposed comparative mindset, where they always have to feel they have to prove themselves, this then leads to a type of self-harming behaviour, self-sabotage, where they perpetuate their own narrative of I'm not good enough or as good as somebody else. Where to be recognised, they go off the path in a deliberate move which garners discontent or reaction from those around them, which that person is waiting for to then feel bad about themselves again. This is a roller coaster of an emotional and mental instability of which that wheel can be very difficult to get off. From the overview, the behaviour is bizarre, but it can be difficult to raise those types of people once they get into a lifetime rut that they are never as good as somebody else. The wheel just keeps spinning and interactions becomes much more frequent. First off, they have to recognise within and of themselves to then begin the process of the self-healing. It's not an overnight process, and it's not an easy process either. It takes hard work. But if that person can spend so much time lowering their own value, why not spend as much time lifting their own value? Now, the mental aspect can be the cause and the consequence of emotional instability, but they also work together in a constant battle, and in essence, this is your left and right brain, which I'll get into later. Emotional instability can erode the mental aspect with constant battling within and of the self, which leads to apathy, lack of will, lack of fortitude, lack of integrity, and a complete dereliction of who you are. And this leads to another wheel of self-perpetuating behaviour as well, because you are no longer you. You have become a mirror version of yourself, a projection, a mask of how you wish to be. But because you lack the will and fortitude to master yourself, you have become a shadow being, or multiple shadows depending on the environment and mindset you keep. Integrating those shadows is the key to mastering instability. It is not about erasing the shadow, but integrating it within you. That mirror version of you that you falsely project is how you wish to be seen. Why not work hard and become that version of you that you are falsely projecting as you, but currently isn't? Yet often is the case in victimhood mode. They are actually that person and yet don't see it in themselves. The energy people expend to become and act in alignment with the false shadow of you, again can be harnessed to become the real you. So it's not like it takes that much more life force energy to correct it. You're actually wasting more energy portraying the false you. The mental and emotional issues of trust is a big thing for many, even when just applying it to the alt media. I've lost count of how many questions I have answered, or sometimes not, of is this person or group good, Thomas? Now, often the questioner states their own doubts within the question. If you are asking me that question, you already know that person or group is not 100% for you. So why do you need me to validate it? We have a person who doesn't particularly trust this group, but trusts somebody else who joined our group this week. That person has doubts in the so-called official narrative, and I hope she learns. So why do you need me to validate it, whether this group is good or not? What makes my opinion more important than your own? The fact that you asked the question tells you you have enough doubts. And so we end up back on the wheel again with insecurity, a lack of self-trust, and low self-worth, are we not? Now, discernment is the word often used and many struggle with. In most cases, it's not discernment that is the issue. It is a lack of self-trust. Those who master self-trust just know that answer before the question is posed. How? Why, you may ask? Because the frequency within it changes. It's like a mini alarm bell that goes off. It's called intuition, which we all have, and yet so few will use it. Many will come up with all kinds of bizarre excuses to themselves to justify themselves not listening. Well, it was just a coincidence, or deja vu, or it was the Mandela effect. No, it was you. The real you. Like I said earlier, people have ears but don't always listen to others, or more importantly, to themselves. And again, from an overview, it's bizarre behaviour. You are given a heads up from a brief interaction of your higher self, and you ignore it. It's no wonder for the many the higher selves haven't been fully switched on, because most of us are profligate about not using it. It's like a muscle, use it or lose it. The key to it all is healing the past and the present to allow yourselves to have a better future. And remember, you may not just be healing your own past, but also your bloodline as well. But healing requires hard work on your part. No one or thing can fix this for you. Only you can heal the you. People can guide you towards a path, but only you can walk it. In the midst of all this personal and emotional instability lies the you. But the you, in essence, is the Russian dolls. You started off with one and created copies, none of which is the original. An example of that is you will all chat in the MeWe or on the Facebook, and you'll be you because you are comfortable talking about certain topics in the MeWe chat or Facebook. And yet you, the you that goes to a family gathering, of which we just had many given it's Christmas, are not the real you, are you? I can feel the collective head nodding to that. That's the example. Where you're comfortable in THI to discuss things, you should be comfortable to do that everywhere. Because that original, there lies the you that has achieved far more than you all give yourselves credit for. The classic example is, oh, I'm just a housewife who looks after the children. Really? You created a living being. Is that not an achievement in and of itself? Or you often hear, oh, I'm just a joiner, or I'm just a painter, or I'm just a wage clerk, without realising what they're saying or putting across. So you can only do joinery. Is that who a being that is the crown of creation should describe themselves as? Just a joiner? Indeed. The limitation of the self-program runs deep in many, defining ourselves by our current job, many of which most of us don't even like doing. Well, if you don't like your job, do something you do like. But I'm just a joiner. Like that is going to appeal to a person potentially hiring you. All that is required is a bit of thought and application to change your situation. You can, in a lot of cases, do much more than you ever imagined. But it all requires the mastery of the emotional and mental state. Without these being individually corrected, your path to merging them into one becomes limited. Controlling emotions and mental states closes down the noise that reverberates through our minds and energy centres. All that noise is much of what you created to drown out the part of you that says, I need you to address this. And suddenly then you are presented with an opportunity to address it by what many think is some random event. It's not. The inner you is screaming to fix this trauma or emotional issue, and another vessel hears it and puts it and you into the arena to see if you will play or if you will run. Now, the best formula, apart from meditation, which can be done to gentle musical rhythms or not, with eyes closed or open once you have mastered the memory code of that frequency zone, the greatest thing is to do what you were created for, being creative. It is this version of humanity's greatest gift. We are better at it than any other species. And yet so often we neglect it, buying stuff instead of fixing it, getting others to do things when with a little patience, oops, I said the patience word again, and perseverance, we can do that ourselves. Values in life of being creative have plummeted on a monetary scale. And that is a deliberate ploy by the system to erode another of our abilities. Arts and crafts rendered to a level of struggling existence jobs. Music also, except for the few that sell their souls for the illusion that is fame. So that the people with creative abilities end up serving burgers at McDonald's to get by, rather than displaying their natural talents. So let's get into the myth of separation. We reinforce ourselves with word spells, left and right brain thinking. This is duality and divide and conquer again, when they are best combined into one thinking process. This then puts an end to the dueling between the two hemispheres and duality, and brings in the harmonic aspect of you, the triality. The two hemispheres, like the two eyes, only give you half of the picture. That is within the forest. When the two hemispheres work together and not dual, in comes the third aspect, the third eye, if you like, that sees through both eyes and has an overview aspect to it as well. This is really seeing things from a whole different perspective, not only on this plane of existence, but others as well. Once those three aspects are mastered and combined like a trinity, it then creates a chord to fire up the heart center of thinking. It is a heightened version of the mental and emotional states of consciousness. In comes elevated empathy, deeper understanding, wisdom, higher intuition, a broader spectrum of the senses of the five and beyond. Your understanding of life and you goes into a whole new realm. The downloads become more frequent. Who and what you are, your purpose in life becomes more defined. Everything becomes more fine-tuned as you are no longer a nest of dolls. You are your own Neo. Spirit inner and your spirit outer becomes more defined in what you wish to do, no longer operating almost as a separate entity. You and it become one. And when your abilities kick in, not only the world is open to you, but the universe. And for the higher mastery again, the multiverse and the universal tree. We need technology to travel amongst the stars. ? When you really master you, you'll become to understand how ridiculous that statement is. Currently, most people are stuck in the astral layer of travel, which, although cleared in some aspects, it is not all as I understand it. Portals and wormholes are often the realms of travelling in the astral. Outside of astral does not always require the use of such technology. Mastery of the self and your own consciousness allows you to travel instantaneously via the cord. Your memory code kicks in and your destination awaits you. And I ask people to try not to use the term astral travelling like it's the only place to go. It's not. That's a spellcast. And there are far more jewels and magical creations to travel to than just the astral. Astral travel is going into the dark beasties realm, so be careful about using that terminology. Word magic and contract on that level are also important, and often we are naive in what we say or mean. So no more "I'll see you in the astral later please," because you won't see me there unless direct actions are being taken, which is far less now than previous. All this beauty and wonder, magical journeys and abilities, meeting places and beings you thought were only in your imagination or in your dreams. Well, you cannot imagine something that doesn't exist. Somewhere, not in the vastness of space, because that reality of vastness is another limitation program, all designed to propagate the little you persona. That exists what your visions have shown you. Word of caution awaits those that reach these levels. It will be a massive test of your ego, because thinking and acting godlike, destroying all and sundry because you can, lording over others because you can, will cause you to fall, just like the allegory of the biblical angels fell. You are not God. You have become a higher evolved being. Higher evolved beings should not display a lack of responsibility and play dick-swinging contests. You have worked so hard to become that higher evolved being, but that does not and never will make you the God. Because that is Source, the creator of everything, of which we are all part of. In essence, we are the creators also, all coalesced in a massive dance within the spark of creativity as you become one, as one within yourself and your own divine connection to Source. So to recap, do you still want to keep your limitation, dualistic, self-loathing, self-lying, astral projecting suit? Or do you want to expand into your own Source connection and blood code? It starts with you. One simple decision changes your whole life and timeline, which is seen as a small leap for you, but is actually a giant leap for mankind. As another starts the journey to their ultimate destiny, once that decision is made, then starts the healing. It is all about the healing of your trauma and your bloodline traumas to give you and your future generations a rebirth and growth opportunity. Do you wish to float among the stars or walk through the treacle of 3D life, weighed down by your own lack of self-worth? Or become the highest evolved version of you in many millennia? Do you wish to loop around the Mobius or reach the number of completion, the figure 9? Is it a 6 or a 9? When combined, or is it both one and the same from all perspectives? As above, so below. During the love-making act, which is the male and which is the female? It matters not from high above, as it all becomes the one. Divine male and divine female. We're not designed to be separate. That is more duality nonsense. Before, long in the past, they were one. If you draw a 6 and a 9 together and look at it from above, it technically becomes 0. But more importantly, the shape of an egg, the home of the ultimate rebirth and the creation of new life. The 0 shape in the egg from the overview is how it all began in the beginning. Out of nothing, 0, came the cosmic egg and the birth of all that ever was. The journey of it all starts and ends with you.